So this is the respiratory system, and I want you to just recognize this. From the skeletal system, we took a look like at sinuses and the conchi, right? I'm going to ignore that half and just focus on this here, which is a sagittal section of the head, right? Okay, so there are a lot of structures on here that you needed to know for the skeletal chapter. I'm going to focus just on respiratory for this video, and I'm going to follow the path of air through this head, starting with nostrils, right? The nostrils are the holes that lead to the nasal cavity. Don't forget the nasal bone here. I guess I'll zoom in. Nasal bone, and then this is the frontal bone with a frontal sinus, sphenoid bone with the sphenoid sinus, and this is the nasal cavity with the superior, middle, and inferior nasal concha, and this hole is for the auditory tube that leads to the middle ear. This region right here then is the nasopharynx. The palate separates the nasal cavity from the oral cavity. There's the bony, hard palate made of the maxilla and the palatine bones, and then there's a soft palate which ends in the uvula. We'll focus more on that in the next chapter. And here are some tonsils as well. These are the pharyngeal tonsils. You might have known them before as the adenoids. These are the palatine tonsils that you can see when you open up and say ah, and the lingual tonsils at the base of the tongue. You can't see that. So behind the oral cavity is the oropharynx. Behind the larynx is the laryngopharynx. And here's the larynx. I have another video for the larynx, but briefly, this is the epiglottis. It's going to fold down over the glottis, which is this space going into the larynx, to, when you swallow, to block air and not block air, block food and water from going into the larynx. Instead, you want food and water to go down into the esophagus, which is posterior to the larynx and the trachea.